the Chase Thomas Podcast, for people who have nothing but time to kill.
Constituent on this very program, and that would be you, good sir. So some Georgia stuff. What do you got for us this week in terms of the University of Georgia, Matt Green?
Yes, sir. I won't waste too much time with the basketball update. At this point, I think the tournament chances really took a hit with this loss to South Carolina this weekend. But you know what? You got to crawl before you can walk.
South Carolina's good, man. They beat Tennessee this past week. They've got 3 losses. They're a tournament team. Like, that's not a bad loss at all.
It's not a bad loss, but in terms, I think Georgia's sitting at 16-7 or something right now. It's not a very impressive record. Like, they blew a couple of leads late, Tennessee, Alabama games, but yeah, still a good season. But I don't think this team's going to be good dancing. But
did you see Tennessee might be a 1 seed? Lenardi, I don't know if you caught the game. 100 points at Rep Arena. It's pretty good.
Yeah, Tennessee's looking good these days, man. Obviously we know they're not going to make a Final Four, but they're gonna enjoy it and have a good time. Maybe win 1 or 2 games in March, but
all right.
But let's go to Georgia. My dog bites for today. I decided to dig into the wide receiver position, or let's just call it the pass catcher position at the University of Georgia, because the last 3 years, this position has been unbelievably consistent. Like, you go back in a time machine where we were January of 2021, after the 2020 season. Like, there's a lot of criticism about what Georgia's offense was. Like, they can't recruit the wide receiver position because their offense is stuck in the past, all this stuff. And then you had 3 straight years of Brock Bowers being one of the best players in college football, leading the team in yards and catches all 3 years. Also, Marcus Rosemey, Jack Saint, and Ladd McConkey the last couple years. Like, it's been extremely consistent. And I look right now, you have to go back to Tavares King, the last time Georgia had a guy lead the team in receptions and yards 2 years in a row. Like, it's been a while. Yeah. AJ Green before that. So, I mean, you got like Chris Connolly in there for a year. Like, George Pickens because obviously George Pickens' career was a little up and down with injuries and things like that. But Kyrus Jackson actually led him in receiving 1 year. So it's like a lot of different guys. Riley Ridley, I think, was in there. Javon Wims. But you look at the wide receiver position has not been very consistent for Georgia until the last 2 or 3 years. Like, Jermaine Burton, you lost a guy who could start for Alabama, and your receiving group really didn't lose anything. Like, it didn't really miss a beat. And that just, I don't think you've seen that from Georgia much throughout their history, to have a wide receiver group that strong. Even A.D. Mitchell, I forgot him. This guy's a potential first-round pick you lost in the portal, and you had one of the best passing attacks in college football this year. You have A.D. Mitchell. You might be in the college football playoff. That might be the extra bit they needed, but I won't say they didn't miss a beat. But that's one thing that I'm really curious to see what Georgia can do next year, because you lose Ladd McConkey, you lose Brock Bowers, you lose Marcus Rosemey, Jack Saint. Now on Georgia's roster, there are more transfer wide receivers than receivers that signed out of high school. Like, Dominic Lovett and Ra Thomas are both, coming back, but those are 2 transfers. And then you're bringing in Michael Jackson from USC, Colby Young from Miami, and London Humphreys from Vanderbilt. So, like, that's 5 transfer receivers on the roster right now that might be your probably top 6, because I think Dylan Bell is going to be in there as one of the best receivers next year. But
he might start, right?
I mean, I think Dylan Bell should be one of the top 2 receivers on the team next year. But it's in all likelihood, just because you have so many transfers, like, most of those top 5 probably guys in targets and yards next year are going to be guys that transferred in.
And it's an interesting way of team building, right? Like, every university has to do this a little bit differently, right? Where some teams attack just patchwork, like Tennessee, for instance, has had to patchwork the offensive line in the portal. We're now going into year 4, and we'll see. I mean, because look at this. Lance Hurd will be the starting left tackle by all accounts. Transfer from LSU, 5-star kid. Left guard will be probably Andre Carriage, but we'll see. Transfer from Texas. Center, Cooper Mays, homegrown. but not from this staff. Right guard, Javante Spraggins, homegrown, not from this staff though. And then right tackle, John Campbell, transfer from Miami. So it's interesting that Tennessee for the last couple of years have utilized the portal. They've done really well in the portal, finding guys like JJ Crawford, Gerald Mincy, among others. Over the last, John Campbell, especially last year at the left tackle spot. But that's where they've had to go to fill out the roster. So you don't want to be only filling out the roster in the portal. You don't want to be a team that's just turning over that much. You don't be the Colorado zone where you're just so many of your guys are coming in through the portal. But you do have to be strategic in the way that you use the portal and where you fill in some holes or like bridge the gap, which is part of it for Tennessee is like the development, because offensive line is such a developmental position that it takes years to get ready to go. So a lot of those guys will be ready to step up next year for Tennessee. Maybe this year, we'll see. But I think for Georgia, it's interesting because you're so deep at tight end. Like all those guys are homegrown. You're not entering the portal at all for tight end. You're not entering the portal really at offensive line at all at Georgia. Quarterback.
You would typically say running back until ETN coming in next year.
Exactly. And it's really just been receiver, right? Like I look at this roster and it's just that's the only spot Kirby has had to go in the portal. And I wonder how much of it is just development issues, like not getting guys because you're getting negatively recruited. And I wonder if it's a negative recruiting thing over the last couple of years because teams can just say, look, Brock Bowers, Heisman guy, Darnell Washington, Heisman guy, they're playing 2 tight end sets. Like, are you really going to get the ball all that much? Like,
say Darnell Washington, Heisman guy?
Yeah. Huh?
Is it Darnell Washington? Heisman?
I'm saying he came in as a Heisman type guy. Like Brock Bowers was a Heisman guy, but I mean Darnell was huge, and Darnell on any other roster maybe looks like a Heisman type guy. But I think it's interesting. But Ladd McConkey was great. Great 3-star kid, and now I think he's gonna be an early pick in the NFL draft. But I'm just very curious because you lose Bowers. And you lose Washington the previous season. You have talent there. Oscar Delp, by all accounts, talented kid. Lucky Lawson, we'll see where he's. Is it Lucky Lawson or Lawson Lucky?
You say it wrong every time. Yeah, it's Lawson Lucky.
Lawson Lucky. I'm sure I'll know his name soon enough because alliteration Georgia tight ends have been pretty good so far. But they're going to be okay there. Jaden Riddell, obviously a super talented kid. He'll get on the field sooner rather than later. But I wonder if Georgia evolves a little bit because this is more of a gap year where you don't have that amazing safety net and you have this 1-2 punch at running back. It seems like with ETN and Robinson going into next year, maybe you don't have to. But like Ra wasn't. He was solid. He wasn't a game breaker for you. Dominic Lovett is a situation where he just kind of had to learn the scheme, learn the offense this past year. They didn't need for him to do a whole lot, and now next year is when he gets back to what we saw 2 years ago at Mizzou.
But Lovett was second on the team in catches though. Like Lovett.
But did it feel like it? Did it feel like he was like a big versus what we saw at Mizzou?
It was. I mean, I think part of it's because McConkey missed some time. So McConkey, when he played, he was the clear number 2. But just Lovett just being consistent. I mean, he was a pretty consistent guy. Yeah. I mean, he didn't have the yards per catch. Definitely, he was doing at Missouri the year before. But not necessarily a star, but just a quality SEC receiver.
Yeah, and we saw a star 2 years ago. So does he get back to being a star at Georgia? And where does Dylan Bell pop? Humphreys, obviously a really good player at Vanderbilt. I'm very, very curious how the snaps go for Georgia receivers and how this strategy pays off for Kirby and what it actually means that he has dipped so much into the portal at that spot. Because it's interesting. You don't see a lot of teams do that.
No, and that's definitely like Darian Kendrick is one of the few I can think of kind of impact guys Georgia got out of the portal that wasn't a receiver. But yeah, you're seeing a lot of it even before the portal was as big, like with a guy like who am I blanking on? Number 15 back in 2019 for Miami, Cager, Lawrence Cager, even that year too, going back that far. So you've seen Georgia do it a good bit. What's interesting though, oh man, I totally lost my train of thought. But I got to get back on track. So I was looking at Georgia's. So this is what I was going to say. I think a lot of it's about narratives. I finally caught myself. a lot of it's about narratives. And I even remember, I think it was Evan Stewart coming out of high school, like basically clowning Georgia. And Luther Burden, I think, may have said something too about a tight end leading them in receptions. And so it's like, at first, it was the passing offense wasn't even good, So you had to get the passing offense back to being good. And then it's now, a tight end is leading them, and they're not a legitimate passing team if a tight end is leading them in receiving. And yeah, maybe that's true somehow in your warped brain, but this tight end was like maybe the best tight end that's ever played in college football. And so now, if you see Georgia with if you got Carson Beck back, right, we expect Georgia's passing offense to be good again next year. And if it's receivers that are doing it, maybe that just changes how high school receivers look at Georgia's program moving forward, that you're not able to see, Brock Bowers is an elite playmaker and Georgia is getting the ball to their elite playmaker, and like that's all they were doing. And if you see them do it in a wide receiver and you see a guy that's got 50 catches for 900 yards and 11 touchdowns and he's a wide receiver, maybe all of a sudden that makes you look at Georgia differently, because that's kind of the last thing they have left. Like, I think George Pickens was that guy, but he tore his ACL and missed what would have been his breakout season his junior year. So I think a lot of it's to do with narratives. And in the meantime, while those high school guys, Mike Matthews, a 5-star from Metro Atlanta, is not picking Georgia, then you can go to the college route, and it's been kind to Georgia to this point.
Absolutely.
But I have one last thing. It got me thinking, top 5 pass catchers since I have been a Georgia fan. I don't know if you have your own list on your site. You can see what you think of mine. First of all, Andre Hastings did not make my list. To the old heads listening out there, I know people love Andre Hastings. I was like 3 years old when he was playing. I know he was great. Eric Zires putting up big numbers. Bryce Hunter, I know the names, but they didn't make my list. At number 5, I'm going with a tie here with Terrence Edwards and George Pickens, because George Pickens is just the absolute elite of elite, like, talent. He just didn't have the production, whereas Terrence Edwards is like Georgia's most productive receiver of all time, but he wasn't the actual like NFL guy. I think he put up some numbers in the Canadian League. But so they're a tie right there at number 5. Number 4, going Ladd McConkey. A lot of people might not expect this, but Ladd McConkey's just super productive, deep threat, make plays after the catch. I think he might be Georgia's best ever wide receiver when it comes to actually making plays after the catch. He's what we all wanted Mecole Hardman to be, honestly. And he actually was just so dangerous after the catch. You could hand it to him. Like, I think he had like 4 or 5 career rushing touchdowns. Like, he was just a dual threat, really. Number 3, I want to say Super Bowl 40 MVP, Hines Ward. Goes without saying, Swiss Army knife. Dude did everything. Number 2, pass catcher, Brock Bowers, best tight end in college football history. And number 1, I got to go AJ Green. That dude was just different.
Can you throw Brock Bowers on here?
Absolutely, sir. Top 5 pass catchers. That's what I'm saying. That was the list.
I don't like this.
Brock Bowers. I mean, he's led Georgia receiving 3 years in a row. AJ Green didn't even do that.
I mean, I don't
disagree.
Pass catcher is just kind of a cop-out.
You got to throw Bowers on a receiver list, though. I mean, I think he's Georgia's all-time leader in receiving touchdowns. Like, he's got to be on there. He's not AJ Green, because AJ Green was just a finished product as like a high school junior, basically. That was just the smoothest athlete I've ever seen. But Brock Bowers, close second.
Terrence Edwards, though.
Terrence Edwards, don't want to throw any shade to Georgia's last 1,000-yard receiver back in 2002. And I think he was the SEC all-time receiver at some point in yards.
He's yet not on your top 5 list.
He was top 5. He was tied for 5 because it's the eye test. It's partly the eye test. Terrence Edwards was good. He wasn't the elite like talent. And I mean, it's no disrespect, no shade to him, because I mean, that's why he didn't play a long career in the NFL. I think he only lasted a year or two. But he was productive in college. I gave him his flowers, but like, if I'm having a pickup game in the backyard and I can get prime Terrence Edwards or prime George Pickens, I probably got to go George Pickens.
I think I go Edwards.
I mean, his
what you're getting with Edwards. Better. Edwards is solid. Edwards was, what you're getting there.
No, that's fair. He was definitely more productive, and
It's almost like one of those things. Do you want Musa Smith or like, who is a highly rated but not as productive Georgia running back?
I don't know, Isaiah Crowell.
Yeah, that's a good comp. Like, would you rather have Isaiah Crowell or Musa Smith?
That's a tough example because Musa Smith's one good year was definitely better than Crowell's one year. Like he had a year where he had like 1,300 yards rushing, but yeah, it's a weird conversation. You're having the production versus like actual talent conversation. Like when people, when you go to talk college basketball, when the people that want to call Tyler Hansbrough like the best college basketball player of all time, it's like, okay, he was around for 4 years, so I get it. He's got the longevity, but Kevin Durant's basically the best player I've ever seen play college basketball. Like the dude was just absurd. So it's a tough conversation. You gotta whatever your criteria may be. But yeah, that's what I'm going. You can't top AJ Green as far as I'm concerned.
No, I don't think you can. I think he has to be number one. I agree. Josh Pate.
Nicely done, nephew. The Chase Thomas podcast. Hell yeah.